My grandparents warned me never to go in the attic, by Klung J1. I've grown up on a farm my whole life. When my parents died in a car crash, I was raised by my grandparents on their farm. We lived a simple and easy life. We didn't even have a TV, so most of the time I spent was outside doing chores, such as feeding the animals in the shack and picking up the crops in the fields. My grandparents sold their crops, vegetables and meat from the animals to our local market. That's how they made their money. My grandparents were very relaxed and kind people. They would let me do whatever I wanted around the house and the farm. They even gave me my own cell phone when I turned 13. They only had one rule that they were very strict about, and that was to never go into the attic. The attic was located right in front of my room. I've only seen a glimpse of it when my grandfather went up once. I was 10 when I first saw it, and I couldn't make out anything significant, as it was night time and there was no light in the attic when I looked. I only saw complete darkness. I never paid much attention to the attic though, so it was an easy rule for me to follow. Most of the time, my grandparents rarely went up there anyway. On one night though, when I was 13, something happened. When I was tucked in bed and ready to drift off, I heard a little sound in the attic above. It was a soft, little groan, like if you bumped your foot onto the chair. It wasn't for long, only for a second, but hearing it made me sit up wide awake now. I listened closely again to see if I could hear something again. Nothing at first, just the crickets chirping outside and the cool breeze of the wind in the night. Then, I heard a soft, little cry. Like a child's soft cry, and that's when I started to get scared. Then I started to think, and I thought maybe it was just my grandparents. Maybe they hit something or bumped into something. This idea calmed me down, and I laid down again, drifting back off to sleep. The next day at breakfast, I asked my grandparents about the noises. "Nana, Papa, were you guys in the attic last night? I heard some noises up there," I said. They both gave each other a look as my grandfather slowly stroked his beard, then said, "What did you hear?" I told them about the groans and the cries and asked if it was them. "Yes, my dear," my grandma said. "Your grandfather bumped into a light bulb and I stubbed my toe on a box. Sorry we woke you up." I didn't buy it, and I decided that night I would stay up and listen for any more noises in the attic. The day was normal as usual. I fed the animals, picked the crops, watered the garden, and when I was done, just played on my phone. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have any friends to text. I just played the only game I had, which was Minecraft. After eating supper that night and saying goodnight to my grandparents, I headed to bed. I stayed up for hours and hours, and eventually I looked at the clock, which read 1:05 AM. I decided to give up, and when I slowly started to drift to sleep, I heard it. A groan, much deeper than the night before. A groan of agony and pain, like someone slowly being tortured. I bolted up wide awake now, and I tried to get out of the bed, but I was paralysed with fear. The groan slowly started to become louder, then it turned into a cry. A soft cry, not like a child's, but of a man. Once I started to relax and take deep breaths, I tiptoed over to my door, deciding whether I should open it or not. The cry started to die down, so I decided to go out. When I leave my room, I'm faced with the darkness of the hall. I use my phone as a light to navigate the darkness. I point my phone up to see the attic door right above. It's at least 10 feet off the ground, and I was a short kid, so I knew I would need something to reach up and grab it. I thought about getting the ladder downstairs, but I decided against it as I would probably make a lot of noise getting it. I decided to sneak back into my room and look around for something. My eyes went to the chair I had for my desk. It was perfect. I slowly grabbed the chair and pulled it out of my room, trying to be as quiet as possible. Once I get it out, I position it right above the attic. The noises have stopped at this point, and all I hear is utter silence. Then I step up onto the chair and pull the string down for the attic. The door opens slowly, and I stare up to see nothing but darkness. I lower the ladder for the attic slowly, moving the chair out of the way as I do so. After I put the ladder for the attic down, I grab my chair and slowly put it back in my room, quietly. I flashed my light into the attic as I slowly started to descend up. I was greeted by a terrible smell. It was like a skunk, combined with the smell of alcohol. I had to pluck my nose as I entered. I flashed the light around to see nothing but boxes and old portraits of my family. I walked over to one in particular and shined my light on it. It was a picture of my mum and dad. My mum was pregnant in the picture with me. The picture looked like it was taken outside the farmhouse. They both looked so happy. My mum with her glowing blonde hair and brown eyes, and my father, who everyone said I looked like. I put down the picture, and as I slowly walked around more, dust started to get in my eyes now as I walked. As I tried to wipe the dust out of my eyes, I heard it. Another groan. A quiet but desperate one. I froze as I heard it. It came from the left corner of the attic. I didn't dare shine my light at it. Then it's silent again. Then I slowly started to move towards the corner where I heard the sound. The only thing I can hear now is the creak of the floor beneath me. As I got closer and closer to the corner, my heart was beating faster and faster. I slowly pointed the light on my phone towards the corner, and as I did, I saw a cloth covering something. I slowly inched forward to the cloth and grabbed it. Slowly, I took it off, and to my horror, I saw a pair of red eyes staring at me from a cage. I gasped and jumped back at the sight, terrified. I saw two deformed creatures with burnt blackened skin and red bulging eyes burn into me. They had no face, but I could see their jagged yellow teeth shaped like daggers. They stared at me, silent at first, only looking at me, studying me. Then they let out the most loud and ear-reaching scream a person could ever make. I fell as they started to growl and throw themselves at the cage, trying to get to me. I covered my ears, and my heart was beating so fast it felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I heard footsteps coming up quickly, and I shone my light to see both my grandparents, horrified, looking at me. My grandfather rushed over to the creatures and sprayed them with a blue substance which calmed them down. They sit there now, only staring at us. "What the hell are those things?" I asked. My grandparents are silent at first. Then my grandfather speaks. "James, those are your parents." "No, they're dead. How could they still be alive? They died in a car crash. How could they be alive? How have they turned into this? What happened to them?" I said. "No, sweetie," my grandma said. "When your parents died, we were heartbroken. We couldn't live without them, so we did something we shouldn't have done." "What?" I asked. "We made a deal with the devil," my grandfather said. "A man came to our doorstep a week after they died, asking if we wanted your parents alive again. He was a tall man with dark hair and dark brown eyes carrying a briefcase. At first, we ignored him, but then he said he knew how to bring back the dead and he could prove it. We brought him in and asked how he could do so, not expecting him to do anything. He opened his briefcase, and inside was a dead dog. He closed his eyes and touched the dog, and it came back to life. He smiled at us and said he would bring back your parents, but there would be a price to pay. We asked what the price was, and he refused to tell us. We loved your parents so much though, and we wanted them back so bad that we agreed. The man asked for a piece of each of their clothing and left, saying they would come back that night. That night, we heard a knock at the door, and we opened it to see your parents alive and well. We were in tears, so happy to have them back. They were fine at first, normal, and acting as they usually did. They loved you so much, always playing with you and making you laugh as a baby. We were a family again. 2 months went by. Then we noticed changes. They became more aggressive, angry as time went on. Their faces started to become hardened, their teeth sharpened, and they started to act more animal-like. They also began to stare at you a lot more, not in a loving way, but a hungry way. They would drool as they watched you sleep. We watched in horror as what was happening, and we made a mistake, and so we tried to kill them. We brought them into an old warehouse near the farm, carrying you as bait. Once they entered the building, we burnt the place down. But they couldn't die. They came back with their skin and face burnt off. It was by some miracle that we found out they hated soap. If we hadn't, they would have eaten you that night. We trapped them in these hunting cages where they'd been for the last 12 years. We told you not to come up here because we knew if they saw you again, they'd get hungry. My parents began to run in the cages, banging on them trying to escape. They pounded and pounded on the cages until finally, the lock snapped off. "Run, James, run," my grandparents said. "We'll hold them off. We love you, son." I seen horror as my grandfather tried to spray the soap at them, but they were too fast, and they started to tear at him, ripping off his arms and legs. I turned and ran, ignoring the screams of my grandfather and grandmother. I hurried down the stairs, not closing the attic as I do so. I ran downstairs and out of the house. I didn't know where to go. I knew I couldn't outrun them, so I decided to head into the farmhouse and hide. I ran as I started to hear my parents growling in the house. I made it into the farmhouse and decided to hide behind a haystack in the back. Once I positioned myself, I waited. It was silent now, only the animals snoring softly in their sleep. And then I heard them. My parents came, growling slowly and sniffing around. I knew they would track my scent if I didn't do something. I looked around and saw a pool of mud right next to me. I started to splash it and rub it into myself, and then I waited. I could hear them coming closer, crawling slowly towards the haystack where I was hidden. I looked through a peephole in the hay and saw them, sniffing, trying to smell me out. I held my breath as I saw them walking around. Then, I saw their shadow forms walk away from the farmhouse and start to run. I didn't dare move until they were out of my sight. Once they were gone, I collapsed and cried until I somehow fell asleep. When I woke up, I saw it was sunny outside. I stood up and slowly walked out of the farmhouse. Then I walked to the house, seeing the portraits and paintings all broken. The windows were smashed, and so was the dinner table. I slowly went upstairs, trying not to step on any glass as I do so. Once I got up, I saw the attic door was still open with the ladder down. I walked slowly up, and when I got up, I saw to my horror the remains of my grandparents. My grandfather was a bloody mess, hands and legs ripped off along with his ears and nose. His face had also been torn and ripped at. My grandmother's eyes was gone, scratched out, and I could see her heart has been ripped out of her chest. I threw up at the sight and began to cry. The image of their dead bodies are still in my head today, forever giving me nightmares. I pulled myself together though and grabbed my phone. I somehow forgot it was in my pocket and dialed 911. When the police came, I told them a wolf had sneaked into the house and killed my grandparents. I told them I hid in the farmhouse from it, waiting until morning to finally come out. I knew they wouldn't believe what really happened to them. I haven't told anyone the truth about what happened until now. I haven't fully recovered from the trauma of what happened that night. After the funeral, I went to go live with my uncle in New York. I'm 18 years old now as I write this. On the news this morning, a child got lost in the woods of Denver and was found ripped apart with his head gone. So I write this as a warning to everyone. Stay away from the woods in Denver, and please listen to your loved ones. If they tell you not to go or do something, don't do it. They are only protecting you from the evil of this world. The devil is real. Monsters are real. Please listen to them for God's sake. Don't let curiosity get the better of you. It's not worth it.